Hey guys, tonight we're taking a brisk journey into the heart of Viking Scandinavia, the kind of place where just getting out of bed to face the icy dawn could be the most daring thing you do all day. Imagine this: you're snug in your bed, and suddenly you're whisked away to a world where the air nips at your face with a frosty bite that seems to promise it won't stop until your nose is as red as a cherry. You're standing beneath a gray, unforgiving sky, every breath a little puff of mist, and every step a reminder that you probably won't survive this chilly adventure. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand there, your boots crunching on the thin crust of snow that stubbornly clings to the earth, and glance at the landscape unrolling around you. It's quiet in the way that only a snow-coated world can be, where sounds seem hushed and even the wind whispers rather than howls. A typical dawn in Viking Scandinavia, where the land is both beautiful and brutal, offering views of rolling hills, dense forests, and fjords so stunning they'd make Instagram crash if any Vikings were around to post them. This isn't a tame landscape, though. The mountains tower like ancient giants on the horizon, their tops lost in a shroud of mist. It's a panorama that comes with a stern warning: survival here is a daily battle. Indeed, historians still argue whether the Vikings chose this place or if it chose them, turning them into the hardy souls remembered and romanticized today. Their lives were crammed with constant work, layered with the anxiety of impending starvation just one failed harvest or bad hunting season away. A glance around your newfound reality hits you with another layer of truth: this is a world without the modern conveniences we take for granted. No central heating here, no cozy electric blankets, just you, a fire, and the hope that you can keep the cold at bay for one more day. Granted, they had fabled skills in leveraging their limited resources, knitting together a patchwork of survival strategies that were nothing short of genius. The chill isn't just in the air, it's also in your bones, urging you to move, urging you to fight back against the numbing fingers of the northern sky. A stone hearth beckons from within a nearby longhouse where faint wisps of smoke weave up into the heavens. You venture closer, the warmth promising solace and survival. Indeed, the Vikings were masters at eking out every ounce of heat from their fires, a crucial buffer between life and the relentless Scandinavian winter. Despite the freezing conditions, there is an odd jovial serenity in these Nordic lands, a magical stillness that whispers tales of myth and legend, sagas born from long, dark evenings huddled around the hearth. It hints at a spiritual connection with their surroundings that's hard to find in our bustling world today. As your senses sharpen, you notice details that speak of survival. To your left, a few brave souls are already at work, early risers carving a life from this harsh world. Their figures move with purpose, muscles straining beneath layers of furs stitched with care. It's an artful assembly of pelts and fabrics designed to block out the cold, colors of earth and storm, punctuated sometimes by beads that catch the light when the sun deigns to appear. Not far from where you stand, warped from frost and weighted from time, a slender river snakes its way silently toward the horizon. It's a liquid lifeline, half frozen now, but a crucial source of water and fish in seasons past. The Vikings relied on such natural resources, though not without risk. Rivers could flood as fiercely as they could freeze, and only those with wits as sharp as their axes knew how to harness them properly. Your breath fogs in the air, momentarily casting a cloud over your vision. As it clears, you notice the silhouettes of birds high above, wheeling in lazy arcs, scavengers who thrive where the land meets the sea. Even the wildlife here has a whiff of myth and mystery, reminding you just how different and difficult survival was back then. Yet, for the intrepid Vikings, this was home, and they faced its challenges with a resolve that feels quite awe-inspiring. Out here, beneath the frosted canopy of a sky that seems to want to swallow the landscape whole, you understand why the Norse scripts are filled with personifications of nature, storm gods, and sea serpents. On days when the cold felt alive, biting more aggressively than usual, it was easy to see why the Vikings imagined themselves as part of a dramatic narrative penned by the very deities they worshipped. And yet, humor was not lost on these hardy souls. The men working nearby occasionally hurl teasing jabs at one another, their laughter a vivid note of warmth against the biting chill. It's moments like these, snippets of camaraderie and defiance against their rugged environment, that kept the Viking spirit buoyant amidst the frost. After all, when your daily life involves wrangling nature itself, a sense of humor is not just an asset but a necessity. There's a certain poetry to the way light slants through the clouds now, glancing off snow crystals and turning them into a blanket of glitter, even if your shivering frame prevents you from fully enjoying it. Around you, the world might seem frozen in time, but for the Vikings, this was a dawning day teeming with potential, the raw materials for tales that would span cities and centuries. Here you are, in this ancient landscape that is as much about survival as it is about storytelling, and it becomes apparent why these people have been immortalized in both. This cold Nordic dawn signals not just the start of a day, but the continuance of a way of life as hard and beautiful as the ice itself. Would you thrive here or retreat to the warmth of modern comforts? That's a question only you, and perhaps the icy wind, can answer. The morning air is sharp against your cheeks as you step out into the cold embrace of the Scandinavian dawn, a place where the sun is more a suggestion than a promise. Shivering slightly, you pull your furs closer, grateful for the layers of dense wool and animal hides that you've carefully wrapped around yourself. Welcome to the daily Nordic fashion show, where practicality and survival are the harsh judges, and every layer of clothing is a nod to another day won over the relentless cold. Furs, my friend, are your new best ally, and learning the Viking art of layering them is as much a skill as any warrior's swordplay. Picture this: beneath a snug woolen tunic lies a base layer that hugs your form, designed to trap as much warmth as your body can muster. It's like a cozy sweater party, but with an edge, because the stakes here are survival, not style. Over this, you drape a thick tunic crafted from soft, woven wool. Historians still argue whether this historically itchy fabric was a running joke among Vikings or an earnest weaving of their history. Either way, it's warm, and that's what counts. Of course, the piece de resistance is the outermost layer, furs. Enveloping yourself in a luxurious bear pelt or a fox hide, you not only combat the elements but also make a silent declaration of status. The richer the fur, the higher your standing, or, at least, the fiercer the animal you, or your hapless neighbor, manage to trap. This little social climb weaves a fascinating texture into the fabric of Viking life, quite literally. But let's not forget the accessories: fur-lined boots that could outshine any modern Ugg boots in a quest for warmth, and hats that would make even the most seasoned hipster envious. You'll find yourself considering whether Viking headgear, with its practicality over flair, could be the next fix for your wardrobe. Spoiler alert, horned helmets are not part of the mix. Those are a later invention idealized by operatic dramatists rather than historical necessity. Indeed, you wouldn't make it a day parading around with those unwieldy things catching the wind, not with your ears needing all the warmth they can get, trust me. What's perhaps most intriguing is the personal touch each Viking adds to their ensemble. Every fur is a canvas, awaiting decoration. Purple dye extracted from sea snails occasionally colors cloaks, marking them as exotically as a modern luxury brand. Norse jewelry transforms these heavy garments into displays of artistry: torques, arm rings, and brooches made not just to fasten but to flaunt. Historians still marvel at whether these items were purely decorative or served hidden, possibly talismanic purposes. That oxbone brooch might have more than just aesthetic appeal; it could be your ticket to good fortune on this icy trek. And then there's the lesser discussed element of function meets passion: scent. Though bathing was a concept Vikings didn't pay much mind to, they were nonetheless meticulous about grooming. In fact, far from the grimy portrayals of modern shows, Vikings likely used scented oils to keep themselves, and their furs, fresh. Imagine some enterprising Viking concocting the earliest version of glacial musk to add a fragrant note to your ensemble. So effective was this grooming ritual that Viking hygiene stunned European contemporaries. Who knew that a comb could be as gripping a tool in Norse legend as a sword? As you wander the settlement, observing the latest trends in fur layering from your fellow villagers, you notice how within this practice lies a crossroad of innovation and necessity. It's a practical choreography where one misstep, like an incorrectly tied cloak or a poorly chosen pelt in November, can spell a day spent with a chill seeping into your bones. Conversely, a flawlessly orchestrated layering could quite possibly be the best thermal technology until Patagonia gets its first showroom. Here among these pragmatic Vikings, you start to appreciate what's really in vogue: resilience. It's less Milan fashion show, more extreme survival reality series, but with a twist of Norse joie de vivre. Each layer of clothing wraps not just warmth but centuries of heritage around you. It's a snug, historical hug, if you like, from ancestors who mastered the elements long before there were electric blankets or central heating. Yet, for all their resourceful innovation, even Vikings must face the occasional fashion faux pas. Consider the cloak that might flap unceremoniously into the breakfast fire, or the tunic so saturated with last night's fish it sends even the most stalwart Norsemen reeling. The Viking catwalk, longhouse floor, isn't without its perils, but that's a story for another day. You might muse over the rich tapestry, both literal and figurative, hanging from your shoulders. From the grumbling groans of fellow villagers as they pull themselves out of slumber, to the quiet understanding as they wrap yet another dense fabric around themselves, there's camaraderie in these early hours. It's a shared knowledge that soon, the grueling business of the day will set upon this band of layered warriors. Yet, for now, there is nothing but preparation and quiet reverence to the proverb that it is, indeed, clothes that make the Norse man. In these layers, practicality binds you, literally and metaphorically. Each snug wrap of the wool and fur tells tales of generations who have huddled around fires, woven tales into garments, and survived against the elements, much like the way their sagas wrap stories around their children's hearts. And while fashion icons today may rival them in aesthetic creativity, few can match the steadfast Viking commitment to making utility stylish. So, as you take another breath of that brisk, frosty air, give a polite nod to your fellow fashion-forward Vikings. You've joined a long line of individuals who turn survival into an art. And as you become one with the throng, cocooned in your gloriously effective layers, you too, if only for a moment, become an honorary Viking. As the first rays of the Nordic sun reluctantly peek over the horizon, you find yourself enveloped in the chilly embrace of a Viking morning. Your breath fogs the air, each exhale a fleeting cloud in the cold dawn. Nearby, there's a simple wooden longhouse, dark smoke curling from its chimney, weaving lazy circles against the crisp sky. The Viking world is waking up, stretching out of its slumber, and you're about to dive right into their daily routine, starting with the most important meal of the day, breakfast. Joining a typical Viking family, you step into the warmth of their household. The air inside is thick with the aroma of smoked fish and fresh bread. The bustling rhythm of morning activity is already underway. Children scamper about, dodging the family's large, tail-wagging dog that's hoping to snag a fallen scrap. The heart of the home lies around the hearth, where generations gather, forming a close-knit community despite the sprawling wilderness outside. Now, you may be wondering, what's on the Viking breakfast table, and is it anything like your avocado toast? Let's just say, if you're hoping for a leisurely espresso, you'll be sorely disappointed. The centerpiece is a steaming pot of hearty grains, barley and oats, to be specific. Cooked to a thick consistency reminiscent of your great-grandma's gruel, these grains are a staple, providing much-needed energy for the hours of toil that lie ahead. So, hats, or helmets, off to the bowl of porridge. Next, your hosts lay out dried fish, often herring or cod. Salted and preserved, it's a bit of a chewy affair, but it packs a punch and flavor. For the Vikings, fish wasn't just a dietary staple, it was also a currency of sorts, traded and cherished. And here's a quirky tidbit to digest along with your meal: Vikings were known to use the heads of dried fish in practical jokes, hiding them as surprises to startle unwary companions. Just imagine coming across one of those while fishing for the day's catch. Washing it all down is, of course, mead, golden, honeyed, and served in horn cups. While today's breakfast beverages trend towards the caffeinated, Vikings relied on mead not only for its warming buzz but also because the fermentation process made it safer to drink than regular water. So, when offered a horn, drink up, because the day is long and it promises to be chilled to the bone. As you gnaw on your fish and take a swig of mead, conversations around the table drift to plans for hunting or the condition of the crops, a reminder that Viking life, though seemingly brutal and raw, was deeply interconnected with nature. Their keen understanding of the seasons and ecological changes was not merely survivalist but also holistic, appreciating the delicate balance between man and nature, even when wielding an axe. Historians still argue whether Vikings developed any breakfast customs as elaborate as our Sunday brunch feasts, complete with bottomless mimosas and endless Instagram posts. It's clear, however, that what they might have lacked in artisanal lattes and decorative pancakes, they more than made up for with protein-packed commencements and a wonderful sense of community spirit. As you finish up, wiping the last bits of grain from the corner of your mouth with your sleeve, you can't help but feel a sense of camaraderie. Despite the rugged setting and the rustic meal, breakfast in a Viking household is more than just food for the body, it's nourishment for the soul and spirit, a reminder that, in the end, it's not the ingredients but the company that truly matters. So maybe next time you're pondering whether or not to skip your own toast in favor of extra sleep, think back to those Vikings, rising in the frigid dawn, determined to face whatever challenges the day might bring with a full belly and an even fuller heart. Now, as breakfast winds down, the sun is a bit higher, casting long shadows across the snow-covered ground. It's time to leave the warmth of the longhouse hearth and emerge into the stark Scandinavian landscape once more, ready to find out what it means to live, work, and thrive in this unforgiving, beautiful world. Though the morning air is cold, the warmth of communal breakfast remains, echoed in the laughter, conversations, and the clinking of empty horns, a gentle reminder that even amidst the fierce Viking lifestyle, everyday rituals like these are what bind and sustain us through the ages. Imagine the crisp Nordic air nipping at your nostrils as you muster the courage to roll out from the warmth of your bed fur. You've managed a breakfast comprised of dried fish and hearty grains, and even tossed back a morning mead, a Viking standard, of course. Now, you find yourself standing before a Viking longhouse, a masterpiece marinated in the wooden aroma of freshly hewn pine, birch, or whatever tree had generously surrendered its life for this architectural challenge. Constructing and maintaining these structures, let's just say it could put modern home DIY projects to shame. The longhouse isn't just a building, it's the lifeline of a Viking village, holding together the social and economic fabric better than the strongest wool thread. Now, you might be asking yourself, why did Vikings build such impressive and spacious homes? For a start, the structure had to accommodate large families, livestock, and the occasional nosy stranger caught in the grip of a Scandinavian snowstorm. Besides, in a world rich in timber but woefully short on iron, wood became the Vikings' closest ally, or so historians still argue whether they were really best friends or more like begrudging neighbors forced to borrow tools every other weekend. Before you can pick up any tool, take a moment to admire the ingenuity here. The longhouse frame is typically built using wooden posts, with the spaces in between woven with wattle, that's basically woven wooden sticks, a bit like crafting a giant basket that's not for picnics. This is then covered with daub, a magnificent ancient cocktail of mud, straw, and dung. Nothing quite reads home sweet home like a fresh coat of earthy plaster, wouldn't you agree? You could even liken it to some early form of eco-friendly insulation. And we all love a bit of green living, even if it does camouflage with the landscape a bit too well. Now, before you drift off like a contentedly fed catnapper under a warm sunbeam, let's loop in a quirky tidbit. Some longhouses could stretch up to 20 to 30 meters, though that's a debate of serious Viking proportions. You can picture it now, Vikings rambling about actual square footage like the world's ruddiest estate agents. Busy Vikings would congregate along these wondrous corridors, bustling and brimming with life, chickens clucking underfoot, goats side-eyeing you from their corner, and the aroma of cooking fires struggling to escape through a smoky haze. Keep in mind, chimneys weren't exactly a common feature back then, so you're likely to come out of a longhouse smelling more smoke than your breakfast salmon. An efficient primer on natural perfume, Viking style. During construction, you can't help but think how modern builders would likely grimace at the lack of metal tools, axes, chisels, and awls made mostly of stone or, when possible, minimal iron. Hammering everything by hand with simple tools was a far cry from today's power tools buzzing around like caffeinated bees. Craftsmanship required not just skill but a sort of patience we've misplaced somewhere between instant coffee and fast food drive-thrus. Picture yourself there, swinging a hammer made from a split rock secured to a wooden shaft with, believe it or not, sinew from whatever beast had recently become dinner. It's a neat little recycling system that today's zero-waste advocates might even appreciate. As you help patch the thatched roof, an activity historians suggest was done with various grasses tightly bundled together, you reminisce about your first attempt at a modern rooftop garden, slightly less practical, might we add, when faced with a Scandinavian downpour. Yet, thatch was surprisingly durable, bits growing here and there, causing the occasional wonder of whether maintaining your longhouse doubled as an impromptu horticulture hobby. Don't forget to patch the walls and floors, either. As the day wears on, you notice the fine line between function and community spirit, the all-hands-on-deck approach. Here you might catch a chuckle from a bearded fellow poking gentle fun at the time you pretended a flat-pack IKEA furniture assembly was anything close to teamwork. Compare that to the centuries-old collaborative task of ensuring a longhouse doesn't just survive but thrives through winter's harsh onslaught. Each artisan notches a voice into history, and you understand why this is more than a physical space, it's a heartbeat, echoing the resilience and resourcefulness of its people. The scene around you settles into a quiet rhythmic pulse, a symphony of wooden tapping, the low murmur of coordination, the distant baa of sheep, all wrapped in the embrace of nature's crisp breath. So, as the day slips into the shimmering hues of evening, you might scratch your head wondering how you ended up debating ancient architectural prowess rather than streaming the latest home improvement show. Still, who needs HGTV when you have an entire Viking village operating as its own living documentary channel, where every channel is history? If nothing else, for one fleeting, fervent moment, you might even feel a sliver of connection across the ages, a shared purpose, whether cobbling a longhouse or typing away at keys. It's an impulse as old as humanity itself, to build, to belong, and, not so coincidentally, to make sure the roof won't leak during the next rainstorm. Or snowstorm. Or, let's face it, snowpocalypse, because this is Scandinavia we're imagining here, after all. And perhaps in those quiet moments of reflection, you realize, even if just for a day, why the Vikings wouldn't trade their longhouses for anything less. Well, unless maybe someone figured out the magic of indoor plumbing in the 9th century, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. As the icy winds of Scandinavia whip past your cheeks, your Viking experience really just begins at home, not the least in the fields and shores. You trudge along a narrow path etched between stubborn plots of land, where Vikings have long grappled with the demands of a fickle Mother Nature. Oh yes, this landscape makes farming seem almost as fun as convincing a cat to take a bath. With your boots sinking into the marshy earth, you discover the ingenious yet grueling work that feeds this rugged society. The Vikings weren't just skull-bashing raiders or eerily calm seagoers, they were first and foremost survivors in an agricultural world. With sunlight that barely kisses the ground for considerable parts of the year, these formidable Scandinavians honed the craft of farming using grains like barley, oats, and rye, which were as reliable as a smartphone battery at 2%. Your stomach, now growling since that dried fish breakfast, might delight in the fact that Vikings adored their grains, churning them into bread flat enough to be mistaken for decorative rock slabs. Imagine cheerfully gnawing on yesterday's rye flatbread while gazing out at the undulating waves, romantic, isn't it? Quirky as it might sound, some Viking settlements even boasted vibrant vegetable gardens, though they were more modest than modern standards. Cabbage, onions, and carrots formed the backbone of Viking comfort food, think chunky stews rather than delicate Instagram salads. But historians still argue whether these vegetables were savored for their flavors or merely tolerated for survival, like uninvited guests who linger at the dinner table. As you wander toward the fjords, your steps naturally align with the heartbeat of the equally vital Viking fisheries. Clad in their signature layered furs, the fishermen seem to have an inexplicable affection for the sea that fell somewhere between respect and dread. Yes, while the treacherous waters were home to creatures like the mighty cod and herring, not quite the mythical kraken of Hollywood films, they required a strong heart and a steady hand. With lines cast into the misty expanse, Viking fishermen braved tide and time, often venturing out in small boats handcrafted from the finest available timber. The catch was the sustenance of entire communities, gelled into salt-dried delicacies with names like stockfish, a food as cherished as it was enduring, far outlasting the patience of their children waiting for mom to finish cooking. But casting a line into these bountiful waters wasn't always as peaceful as you might think. the art of fishing was enmeshed with unpredictable dangers. Crazy as it sounds, tales persist of hungry gulls swooping down to pilfer the freshest catches, much like arguing over the last pizza slice at a family gathering. Still packed with determination, the Vikings engaged in fishing not only as a necessity but as a strategic component of their ever-evolving society. Of course, in true Viking fashion, when farming and fishing couldn't fulfill their demanding appetites or growing needs, there was one surefire way to supplement their livelihoods: raids. The exhilarating if harrowing notes of the saga are punctuated by the rumble of longships racing to distant shores. Just like that one colleague with a penchant for borrowing others' office snacks, Vikings often ventured beyond their lands in pursuit of resources and wealth. Whether it's Ireland's monasteries or the fertile lands of England, the line between necessary raids and opportunistic advantage blurred with time. And even more fascinating are the scholarly debates swirling over just how pervasive these raiding expeditions truly were. Some suggest they were rare and opportunistic, while others point to evidence that they were as routine as a weekly grocery run, albeit with slightly more drama and considerably fewer coupons. As you stand by the shore, imagining the horizon alive with Viking sails, it's intriguing to think of these expeditions not simply as chaotic blunders but meticulous operations driven by need and curiosity, like a trip to IKEA where you leave with 10 things you didn't plan to buy. Each bite of hearty barley porridge or a slice of salted fish is a testament to the relentless pursuit of balance in Viking life, a juggling act between taming reluctant earth, wresting bounty from the seas, and occasionally setting sail for a bit of plundering brilliance. Through the rigors of farm and water, you glimpse a society that accepted trial and tribulation as constant companions on their quest for subsistence and prosperity. Here in Viking country, the till and tides hold sway, and while you might long for GPS or an app to predict the whims of the sea, the tenacity curling beneath those heavy woolen cloaks leaves you thoroughly impressed. As you shake off the remnants of sea spray with an appreciation for your cozy, fish-free sofa back home, the Viking spirit lingers, a whisper along the relentless Scandinavian winds, questioning whether modern comfort and ancient resilience can find common ground. With a sleepy smile, you perhaps humbly concede, the Vikings' way was quite the catch. As the chill settles in and you wander through a Viking settlement, you quickly discover that surviving here involves much more than just battling the elements. It's a social tapestry as complex as a knitted Christmas sweater, but perhaps with fewer awkward reindeer. You may have thought Vikings were all about raids and epic battles, but oh, the webs they weave in their day-to-day village life. Here it's more about who knows whom, who's allied with whom, and which blacksmith makes the best nails for your longship. Kinship and alliances are the social currency here, making your modern-day social networks look like amateur hour at the comedy club. The Vikings' societal structure is deeply rooted in these connections, with family ties serving as the glue that holds communities together. Marriages are more than just matches made by mischievous gods. They're strategic alliances bringing households into closer economic and military cooperation. Imagine a Viking Tinder profile, looking to raid and trade, must be okay with long winters and familial obligations. Historians still argue whether the Vikings' focus on kinship was more about survival or social prestige. You might find yourself pondering if you would gain favor through your witty conversational skills or perhaps through your skill in brewing mead. And while you think of ways to charm your way into the better graces of these Norse men and women, your stomach rumbles, but alas, this is no time for a snack. Amidst the social maze, you'll notice that Vikings extend a warm hearthsit to allies, but betrayal? That would make the dreaded social faux pas of using the wrong fork at dinner seem insignificant. Alliances are enormous responsibilities. They come with shared resources, joint military endeavors, and yes, a fair share of family drama, because what's a gathering without a little tension over who forgot to bring the salted herring to last month's feast? Viking society is a mighty game of alliances, and the stakes can change as swiftly as the North Sea tides. One moment you're toasting mead with friends, the next you hear whispers that someone's been squabbling over land rights. Here, even minor slights can turn into full-blown sagas or, at the very least, a minor skirmish. Just remember, in this world, alliances are sealed with oaths, and breaking them can lead to more than just an awkward silence of the lamb-style dinner party. Perhaps you're wondering what role trust plays in this community where everyone knows everyone else's business, literally. In this tight-knit society, trust isn't simply an abstract concept, it's currency. No one's going to lend you their trusty axe or let you borrow a cup of, well, dried fish, unless you've proven yourself reliable. It has to be, considering that during long voyages or raids, a loose tongue or a weak handshake could be the difference between coming back with treasure or becoming part of a grisly saga yourself. Remember that a good part about alliances also involves lending a hand, or rather, many hands, during local assemblies known as the things. And exactly who is discussing what with whom is often a matter of great scrutiny. These alliances even extend across the seas. Vikings are craftsmen in the art of alliance forging, using their finely tuned barter skills to swap goods and establish relations with distant lands. And don't be surprised when you hear tales of Viking traders in Byzantium or Baghdad. These are raiders with a global network more sprawling than any modern corporate office. In Viking culture, tales are passed down with the dramatic flair of a Shakespearean play, and trust me, you'll want to gather closely when the skald chants the latest exploits from across the seas. Every new ally means more stories, and storytelling is as much an art as it is a display of your social capital. It's like being at the most exclusive book club meeting, but instead of wine and cheese, it's meat and more fish. And here's the quirky bit: similar words we might use today, like friend or enemy, didn't hold quite the same meaning. The Norse believed emotions were attached to the liver, not the heart. So next time you express your emotions, consider saying, "You really screech on my liver." Okay, maybe that's more literal than poetic, but it's a fun cultural curveball. Navigating the intricacies of Viking social life is more exhausting than taking part in a spinning class you weren't quite ready for. Yet, here the rewards are rich and the stakes high. Alliances are treasures more valuable than silver, or even ale. Amidst all the oaths, alliances, and potential betrayals, you begin to see why a Viking wouldn't last long without a secure circle of allies, just as you wouldn't last long if you showed up in modern-day Scandinavia with only a bikini and a sun hat. As the day carries on, you reflect on how swiftly alliances can turn the tide of fortune in Viking society. Friends becoming foes with one wrong word, strangers bestowing aid with a mere promise of future loyalty. The complexities are as layered as a hearty vegetable stew simmering in a cauldron by the fireside. Sleep rolls in like a gentle fog as thoughts of trust and kinship lull you into contemplation beside the crackling hearth. Amidst the flickering shadows, you ponder how you'd navigate this world, where social fabric is as strong as the sails that drive their formidable longships through the icy waters. As you find yourself amidst the lively chaos of a Viking port, the salty sea air mingles with the scent of fresh fish and tar. Here, trading and raiding flow together in a fascinating and somewhat paradoxical dance that forms the backbone of the Viking economy. Picture it, an ancient bazaar bustling with energy where merchants haggle over walrus ivory, narwhal tusks, and exquisite amber, each item more exotic and fantastical than the last. Oh, and don't forget the furs. You're probably still wearing some, whether you want to or not. These ports are the Viking equivalent of a modern-day shopping mall, where both the unusual and the everyday collide into a symphony of trade. But unlike your neighborhood mall, this marketplace has no walls or food court. Instead, you have open-air stalls precariously perched on uneven earth, where each trader's voice blends into a cacophony of offers in a language full of promises. You hope they have a satisfactory return policy since receipts are conspicuously absent. As the day unfolds, you'll notice there's a fine line between commerce and conquest here. This is where trading and raiding reveal the dual nature of Viking life. While today's exchange involves a barter system that might leave you pining for simple currency transactions, Viking merchants are just as likely to embroil themselves in swift, ruthless raids when the opportunity, or lack thereof, calls for it. Historical records echo tales of daring raids that filled the gaps between trades when supply chains ran thin and customers scarcer than hen's teeth. But before we launch into any swashbuckling, it's essential to touch upon the sophisticated network of trade routes the Vikings built, extending from the frozen banks of Scandinavia to the Turkish delight-filled bazaars of Byzantium and even beyond to the Arab world. Some scholars still debate the full extent of their network, with theories suggesting they voyaged farther than the plot of many an epic saga. Did they land on shores we barely know today? Could their longboats have crossed paths with traders from lands shrouded in mystery? Historians still argue whether these seafaring Norsemen ever tossed anchor on the distant shores of the American continents long before Columbus's doubloons had ever been coined. Standing amidst it all, you watch as goods are loaded and unloaded from the ships, a process both methodical and chaotic, with muscles straining, ropes creaking, and cargo occasionally plummeting to the docks below. A slight chuckle escapes you at the picture of humanity's joys and material wealth. Some things never change, right? Of course, the fur trade isn't just about keeping warm. It's about status, an ancient fashion statement that would make any modern hipster reconsider their minimalistic wardrobe. Besides pelts, the Vikings had an eye for ambient luxury, trading precious metals like silver and exotic imports like silk. Silk, believe it or not, was the ultimate Viking flex, making a statement clearer than a well-defined Norse rune. As you wander further through the vibrant port space, careful not to trip over a stray chicken crossing the path to, well, wherever chickens aimlessly wander, you come across one of the quirkiest sights yet, a trader offering small lenses polished from rock crystal. These aren't your prescription glasses or trendy sunglasses, mind you, but lenses that some believe may have been used by Vikings as magnifying glasses or even as proto-telescopes. That's one way to keep an eye on things, or so the theory goes. While observing all this, the term raiding suddenly acquires a new context for you, one less about pillaging villages and more about opportunistic business strategies that just happen to involve looting a beach town or two when stocks are low. In the Norse lexicon, raiding may have simply been another word for aggressive diversification. Eventually, as the sun dips lower in the sky and the port starts its mundane transformation into a peaceful haven, or as close as it gets to one, you ponder the complex juxtaposition of a society living off both trade and raid. Vikings revered wealth, viewing it as a token of success, much as we might view the latest smartphone or that rare collectible that's more prominent in a wish list than in reality. Coincidentally, the simplicity calls back to when they traded the first piece of Scandinavian finery for a colorful bead. Evening encroaches, and you can't help but feel a slight camaraderie with these enterprising Norse folk, men and women whose business acumen was as sharply honed as their blades. Closing your eyes, you imagine how you'd fare in such a world, a realm where the line between merchant and marauder blurs just like the fading daylight on the horizon. Would you embrace the thrill of the high seas in pursuit of riches, or would you prefer a quieter life, handling wares back on solid ground? Perhaps the domestic tranquility of neighborhood raiding remains the better option if seasickness is a concern. But even as these questions swirl around your mind, you feel the fatigue of the day settling in, realizing that neither the ebb of scholarly debates nor the flow of history's intricacies will pause as you drift on the cusp of sleep. Whether trading, raiding, or ruminating the vastness of what the Vikings achieved, or stumbled upon, it's clear they carved a mark in a world far colder and darker than most of us could imagine. And from that cold domain, they executed conquests and commerce with an artistry that leaves us spellbound, historians and armchair anthropologists alike. As always, in these last moments before the hush of dreams descends, it's worth musing, in a place where life was an unpredictable adventure and wealth was hard-won, can those lessons of embrace the unexpected still apply today? Perhaps tomorrow holds the answer, nestled somewhere between the past and the stories that make history linger long after the torches have been snuffed. Until then, may your dreams whisper of Viking voyages. Your heart races a little as you step aboard a Viking ship, the formidable Gnar or sleek longship that has become synonymous with Norse explorers and raiders alike. The wooden hull creaks, a sonorous symphony of timber and seawater. You try to find your sea legs amidst the organized chaos, dizzy under a sky that can't decide if it wants to shower you with rain or give you a brief reprieve. The air is a mix of salt, sweat, and wood tar, an artisan-approved cologne of the Viking age. They say the sea is a cruel mistress, and as you clutch the ship's railing, you start to understand why historic mariners wrote volumes about her temperamental nature. Today, you are expected to hone skills that were once a lifeline for Viking settlers, but secretly, you're wondering if all this seasickness is worth it. Check your expectations at the door, because the serenity promised by endless blue vistas comes with a fair bit of heaving waters. You might even get a taste of pickled herring twice if you're not careful, provided you've managed to keep breakfast down. Ponder why Vikings spent more time embracing the treacherous seas rather than settling for terra firma bliss. The truth? It's all about necessity and opportunity. Land is good, but the treasures of expansive waters were better. The journey of mastering Viking navigation is akin to a pressure-laden episode of your favorite survival show. Forget GPS, these hardy warriors relied on the sun, stars, and ocean landmarks. Imagine using calcite crystals, known until not so long ago more in mythology than practice, to locate the elusive sun during cloudy spells, a technique historians delightfully dub as sunstones. Picture yourself pulling one of these mystical rocks from your pocket to track the invisible sun, as if mashing together an epic quest and a rummage through a mythical toolbox. There's a healthy debate about whether the sunstone was indeed as precious and practical as it is legendary or just an accessory overstated by Hollywood and maritime lore. Still, it's fascinating to think you could become a well-versed sky reader with what seems like foggy glass in your hand. As you practice with your imaginary sunstone under the grizzled eye of a seasoned Norse sailor, you learn that Viking captains needed to pair such tools with an intrinsic knowledge of coastal markers. The suspenseful side of this seafaring deal is navigating amidst the unpredictable backdrop of rough northern waters, while keeping a steady eye on the treasure troves, or enemy lands. No easy feat when the waves played harder than most raiders you've read about. Fun fact, Viking ships were not merely silhouettes against open seas, they were adapted masterpieces of oceanic engineering. Those shallow keels? Perfect for high-speed chases and quick landfalls, like a ruthless Scandinavian scooter gang. Today, you'd say they were designed by an eccentric engineer with a pirate heart, favorably influencing everything from transport to tactical raids. While your plan for today includes not-so-voluntary sailing duties, these vessels require a team as tightly knit as a well-fitted shipboard sail. It involves rowing, an exercise in team-building Vikings probably didn't need HR to facilitate, and hoisting sails made from wool, maintaining a constant movement like a restless dolphin. Sparsely packed vessels left space for the spoils of a good raid or significant trading cargo, promising riches and enticing any adventure seeker worth their salt. And who doesn't appreciate the allure of a dramatic sea battle every now and then? Within Norse culture, these confrontations were as much about honor as practicality. An encounter might lead to fierce combat or instead evolve into a fraternity of mutual understanding and benefit. Historians still argue whether the tactical precision involved was more about strategic genius or raw opportunism, a scholarly showdown of sorts. As for the not-so-glamorous aspect of this jaunt upon the waves, minutes stretched to hours under the unpredictable northern climate. The romance of sailing, interrupted by salt spray stinging your cheeks, quickly withdraws into uncomfortable stoicism as rain occasionally mingles with a persistent cold gust. There's a stark realization as you bemoan the loss of indoor plumbing, small sacrifices, right? The Vikings crafted unspoken poetry in their handling of such days, transforming grumbles into hearty sea shanties and fleeting camaraderie. Glimpsing through the prism of time, you gather just how instrumental sail and oar were to the Norsemen, disclaimers on comfort levels notwithstanding. Picture a group, backs bent, hearts full of determined songs, working in unison against the sea's tantrums. Viking life demanded a specificity in skill and fellowship. For that, your respect for their grit can only sail upwards. It's not just about survival, it's a chance at thriving in the rhythm of the tides, chasing fleeting horizons, all driven by the siren call of curiosity and conquest. Remember that faster heartbeat from earlier? Now contrasted by a sense of awe, as you attain a sliver of understanding why these mariners would brave such unstable elements, the irresistible call of wind-driven freedom, the hunt for glory or redemption, and sometimes just the plain old love of good old discovery. Riding these ancient waves carries echoes of tenacity and nostalgic resilience, marking why not many would genuinely last long as a Viking sailor. Somewhere between attempting to spot land or lace up your metaphorical sea boots, you reflect on the transformation. From landlubber to pseudo-sailor, the transition is as expected, comical, genuine, and yet somehow grounding in its ambition. The mariner's life, a cocktail of hardships with a hint of epic, roars on. Will you walk away with newfound skills, or simply a renewed appreciation of modern conveniences? Either way, let the historical debate on Viking sea travel legacy continue afar. You're quite content dreaming of stepping back onto solid land, awaiting the next chapter of Viking revelry. As you take your first steps onto the frostbitten training grounds, the morning air bites at your cheeks, a subtle reminder that the Viking way of life is not for the faint-hearted or anyone who likes sleeping in past sunrise. It's daybreak, and already, the Viking warriors are out practicing their drills, each movement a testament to the rigors of their discipline. You rub your eyes, trying to shake off the fantasy that sleeping beneath an ashwood roof provides any warmth or luxury. But don't worry, napping on rough animal hides will make a glorious return in your day-to-day routine soon enough. Picture this: young men, and sometimes women, honing their skills as future protectors of their villages. This isn't your average morning yoga class by any stretch. The warriors, clad in layers of wool and leather, practice with wooden shields and blunt swords, an artful dance between man and weapon. Their expressions range from fierce concentration to what can only be described as a curious form of joy. As you watch, you can't help but wonder if you might find greater balance swinging a double-sided axe than you ever did with those 2-pound dumbbells. But don't let their apparent ease fool you. Behind every drilled maneuver is an intense training regimen and an unwavering willpower that could likely outlast your smartphone battery on a winter day in Reykjavik. These warriors undergo not just physical training, but also mental fortitude that would make a stoic monk look like a lightweight. You see, getting into random plume-topped conflicts wasn't exactly about being gym-ready. Viking warriors required a blend of cunning strategy, courage, and teamwork with a dash of who's up for a little friendly raid thrown in. As the sun rises higher, casting a reluctant warmth across the land, you notice a seasoned warrior overseeing the younger ones. His presence alone demands respect, a kind of human lighthouse amidst a stormy sea of greenhorn aspirations. You hear his guttural commands, probably about as hard to decode as that last tip on your IKEA manual, steering the trainees through their paces. By Thor's hammer, the place is buzzing with the sound of clashing wood and the vibrant humility of men and women learning their craft. Historians still argue whether these Viking warriors preferred fighting shirtless, displaying their robust physiques for better intimidation, or whether this is just an exaggerated detail cooked up by modern storytellers and TV shows seeking to woo their audiences. Regardless, depictions of bare-chested brutes facing icy winds seem a tad underwhelming to anyone who's had to scrape ice off their windshield without gloves. While they train, these warriors are also imbibing a spirit, a fierce connection to their mythology and a society that places a premium on courage. You overhear snatches of conversation, tales of divine warriors and epic battles that fuel their resolve. It appears that life in Viking Scandinavia is as much about mastering the sword as embracing the lore that made them not merely fierce opponents, but also formidable legends. And then, there's the little-known tidbit that might surprise you: Vikings, contrary to popular belief, didn't just rely on brute force and might. Many were extensively trained in tactical strategies that involved complex formations and ambush tactics right out of a Trojan playbook. Imagine, if you will, a burly Viking warrior sketching tactical maneuvers into the sand, all while you ponder over bedazzling your outfit for the raid because, you know, legacy and fashion go hand in hand. Amidst the din of clashing practice swords, you can't help but chuckle at the parallel universe where these skills translate into modern-day corporate training sessions. Try imagining your office team-building exercises with battle axes. Human resources would have a field day with that one. Or envision the Viking workout trend hitting your local gym. Thighs by Thor, anyone? All at once, you recall that glitzy home gym equipment that's now a very chic scarf rack. By midday, the warriors break for a meal, a hearty feast of fruits, dried meats, and grains, scoffed down with what one can't precisely call a low-calorie beverage. Mead flows like the social media timelines we're so accustomed to scrolling through. The younger warriors listen eagerly to stories of old, battles fought and won, heroics embellishing the otherwise mundane rhythm of rowing a longship for hours on end. Here, amidst shared cups, a kinship forms that can only be born out of shared hardships and collective dreams. As you stand there, absorbing both the camaraderie and the absurdity of it all, you find an odd sense of peace realizing how far disciplinary tactics have come, or not. Their world mixes valor with humor, hardship with festivity, and you find an unexpected resonance. After all, their relentless preparation speaks to something fundamentally human: the need to push boundaries, to rise against the odds, and to armor oneself both literally and figuratively against whatever the day might bring. And so it goes, under these bleak Scandinavian skies, where Viking warriors refine their skills for life's battlefield. They etch the discipline into their muscles and minds, preparing not just for raids but for tales of greatness whispered by the fireside. They stand as bulldogs against life's inevitable winter, poised with both weapon and willpower, and maybe, just maybe, an inkling of caffeine withdrawal. As you mull over all this curious intensity, the modern world feels that much lighter, its battles seemingly less epic yet still deeply personal in their own way. A warrior's legacy, a Viking's day, it leaves you pondering the resilience of spirit and the strange allure of tales etched into the harsh reality of Nordic life. As you step into the spiritual realm of Viking Scandinavia, the air seems to grow heavier with the whispers of ancient tales and the omnipresence of deities. It's an inviting place where the gods are as close as the stars twinkling in the night sky. A tapestry of mythology unfurls before you, each thread woven with stories of might, magic, and fate. It's here you realize that every Viking step is guided by a belief in divine influence, a comforting thought, unless you remember this guidance might also lead you into a god's-inspired dust-up or two. You can almost hear the low rumble of Thor's thunderous temper as you walk, the heavy hammer, Mjolnir, echoing its distant strikes against the clouds. But before you shiver at the thought of an irate deity with a penchant for storms, a gentle breeze carries another sound to your ears, the merry tune of a saga being told. It's a reminder of how these larger-than-life figures were woven into the everyday fabric of Norse life, influencing decisions, bestowing blessings, and occasionally, being blamed when the crops failed or your schooner met an untimely iceberg. Among these divine characters, Odin stands tall, or perhaps sits, since he's generally portrayed as pretty wise and might prefer a comfy seat. His quest for knowledge and insatiable curiosity makes him the go-to god for matters requiring a more cerebral approach, such as, should we try that fermented shark, or is that strictly for the tourists? But be wary of his knowing eye, the one he traded for wisdom, watching over the land. Some historians debate whether the Norse tales of Odin traveling in disguise inspired later stories and other folklores. But really, who hasn't resorted to a little costume change to avoid a social faux pas? Then there's Freya, a goddess whose talents range from love to war, a spectrum that modern practitioners of multitasking could appreciate. The beauty of Freya is said to rival even the most enchanting sunrise over a fjord. She rides a chariot pulled by two blue cats. Just picturing that has to bring a smile to your face. One has to wonder if her feline companions were early adopters of the eternally judgmental cat stare. Indeed, Freya's influence on matters of the heart made her a prominent figure in the personal tribulations and victories of Viking life, and perhaps play a part in the perennial Norse complaint, why can't a nice Viking find a good shield maiden these days? The belief in these gods was no mere side note, it was a central melody. Rituals and sacrifices were commonplace, sometimes calling for a simple offering, say, a loaf of bread. Other times, the stakes were higher. Historians still argue whether these rites were purely expressions of devotion or strategic plays for divine favor, like, "Hey Odin, help me out here and I'll name my firstborn after you." Or at least a goat. One quirky inclusion in their spiritual practices was the use of runes. These weren't just nifty symbols for tattoos that scream, "I went to Scandinavia once." They were imbued with magic, used in divination, and believed to be capable of powerful spells. Runestones and talismans covered in these mysterious carvings filled both mundane and monumental parts of Viking life, a tangible connection to a metaphysical world where human and god could have a good chinwag. Yggdrasil, the immense and central sacred tree, was thought to hold the 9 worlds within its branches, a sort of Norse version of the internet, but far more serene. You half expect to see little notes pinned to its bark, "Lost helmet, reward offered," or "Giant problem, call Thor." It's a unifying vision of the cosmos that reinforces the interconnectedness of fate and life, both divine and mortal. It anchors the belief that everything is part of a greater whole, a comforting coil of destiny, unless you've just lost a raid and need to explain said destiny to your villagers. While the pantheon of gods may appear to rest upon grand thrones in Asgard, their presence among Vikings was as tangible as the axes they wielded. Imagine a world where each sneeze was not merely dismissed but examined for divine intent, or where spotting a raven could mean anything from a bold adventure to, honestly, just a bird having a busy day. Every toast was another chance to curry favor, every misstep possibly a divine lesson, or just a clumsy encounter with a loose root. You consider how exhausting it might be in modern life if every elevator ride carried the weight of potential divine discourse. These tales, echoing across ages, are delivered from the lips of the skald, gifted storytellers of the Viking world. Their sagas are not mere bedtime stories, but living scriptures that validate the life choices of warriors and farmers alike. Ashes of tales past strike a resonant chord in the ears of future generations, ensuring that each passage of the saga remains unforgotten, much like the echoes of a catchy jingle that burrows into your brain and sets up camp. And so you tread onwards, relatively sprightly in the weighty presence of Norse mythology, lingering with each step, or skaldic recital, that this intricate lattice of beliefs is a testament to the human need for understanding in a complicated world, the Norsemen's divine navigation system through a sea of uncertainty. It's fascinating to observe how these beliefs, much like Freya's cats, tread softly through the ages, maintaining mysterious allure and inscrutable wisdom. What wouldn't the Viking realm give for GPS device updates? It seems like Norse mythology spun the original coordinates, after all. As night falls, the stars cast a wink and nod approvingly at your journey through the cosmos of Viking deity drama. You may not have figured out why Loki is always up to no good, but isn't that the beauty of it? A myth is an invitation to ponder, to find lightness in the layers of lore, even if it wouldn't save you from a downpour or help you blend in at next week's goat-blessing feast. In these ancient echoes, you find not just a world gone by, but whispers that remind you, much like that Viking helmet you considered lugging home, of how stories are lifetime companions, whether they're shared by torchlight or under the glow of fluorescent bulbs. Step out of the shadow of towering longhouses into the heart of Viking village life, and you might notice that much of the hustle and bustle revolves around women. It's a revelation, especially if you've bought into the modern myth that Vikings were all burly men in helmets squabbling over loot. Women are the unsung heroines of this saga, multitasking with a flair that would make a modern executive assistant sweat. They bake, brew, farm, weave, and even slip into roles you might find surprising, like holding keys, literally and metaphorically, to the household. Picture Freydis Eriksdotter, a daring explorer much like her brother Leif Erikson, embodying strength and leadership in a time where travel by sea was basically nature's extreme sport. Women in Viking society weren't just household ornaments, they could command ships, negotiate trades, and some, like the famous Lagertha, even fought in battles. Historians still argue whether these warrior women were widespread or exceptions that became legendary, etched into the rich sagas that echo down the ages. Wander past a Viking weaving session, and you'll hear tales of triumph, sorrow, and endurance. The loom is not just an instrument for crafting textiles, it's a storytelling portal. Women weave expansive tapestries that chronicle lineage and legacy, every thread a whisper of history. Imagine the explosion of color in a vibrant tapestry of blues, reds, and yellows, a rarity in this rugged, muted landscape, each hue a testament to their dyeing prowess and technique. The sound of children playing echoes through the village, a sweet melody punctuated by the occasional admonishment. Viking women are fierce protectors of their children, doubling as teachers and caretakers. Here, play is not just a frivolous pastime, it's an instructional tool. Children learn to measure strength, navigate social dynamics, and most importantly, toughen up. The Nordic climate, much like life, can be brisk and unforgiving. And then there's the matter of property and legal rights. Yes, you heard that right, Viking women can own property and are key players in inheritance matters. They wield significant domestic power, often managing farms in their husband's absence. While not exactly signing trade agreements on their own, their influence is undeniable. The household keys they carry symbolize responsibility and trust. They are gatekeepers in more ways than one. In the flickering light of a hearth, women are adept healers, using herbs and traditional remedies to stave off the maladies of their time. You might even find yourself subject to an ancient herbal concoction that could rival your grandmother's chicken soup with its placebo magic. Viking women knew their plants and potions like you know your favorite app, only theirs didn't crash as frequently or need a 5G connection. Now, a little Viking gossip, Did you know the concept of a shield maiden sparks quite the scholarly debate? Some assert they are mythical creations amplified by saga embellishments, while others dig up grave sites to argue their historical reality. Regardless of physical evidence, their presence in lore speaks volumes about perceived societal norms and aspirations, hinting that if they didn't exist, perhaps they should have. As dusk falls and torches line the pathways, Viking women conclude their busy day with an art form close to everyone's heart, the saga. They are skilled narrators, voices rising and falling like the sea, drawing family members and villagers into the age-old tales that define their culture. Here, history is a performance art, and everyone has a role to play. Walking away from the warmth and glow, you can't help but appreciate the Viking woman's skill in holding their worlds together. They are warriors in their own right, battling the elements and societal challenges with resilience tucked beneath layers of wool and narrative. So, while you ponder your own modern obstacles, remember the Viking women who managed it all without so much as a planner or alarm clock. Theirs is a legacy of strength not always sung about but deeply etched in the fabric of time. You find yourself amidst the chatter and clamor of the local thing, the Viking assembly that is both a court and a community meeting, where everyone from old warriors to young farmers gathers. Picture a medieval parliament but with more dramatic beards and fewer structured debates. Here, under the open sky or within a wooden hall, justice and governance unfold in a manner as rugged and freewheeling as the Vikings themselves. You can almost hear the ghosts of countless arguments echoing between the timbers, a backdrop to this time-honored tradition. The thing, contrary to what your gadget-loving self might think, isn't a precursor to today's smartphone, but a democratic gathering where free men discuss and decide on matters both civil and criminal. As you adjust your seat on a wooden log, cushioned by your imagination, you're reminded that this gathering is both practical and social. Viking society, rooted in kinship and alliances, finds its backbone in these assemblies. You glance around, noting the earnest faces in deep discussion. It's a cooperative affair, albeit with the occasional disagreement that, let's be honest, is as predictable as your uncle's rant during Thanksgiving dinner. The thing wasn't just about deciding who gets the family sword or debating if apples are better than pears. It involved serious decisions impacting the community, such as property disputes, marriage negotiations, or accusations of witchcraft. There's even a chance someone might bring up theft, in which case the assembly might sentence the guilty to pay fines, known as bot or wergild, to avoid the more medieval option of a duel. However, historians still argue whether these meetings were more orderly debates or something that resembled a boisterous debate club. The assemblies had layers of sophistication, with structures in place to manage proceedings. The law speaker stood at the epicenter of action, reciting from memory the laws of the land, not too different from a walking, talking Google search, but perhaps with more tangents and certainly no interruptions from ads. This role was vital, as maintaining the legal knowledge of the community was not an easy feat, given the lack of written records in the early Viking Age. An intriguing aspect of the thing is that it wasn't just for the old, wise men. Youngsters were expected to watch and learn, ensuring that each generation was as capable, or as stubborn, as the last in handling communal life. Bit by bit, generation after generation, the legal customs were passed down like an oral family heirloom, polished over years of usage into a governance system that, while unwritten, was impressively robust. One peculiar and lesser-known feature of the thing was its approach to consensus. Instead of endless talks leading to deadlocks, something our modern assemblies know all too well, Vikings favored a majority decision, usually established through loud expressions of support. Imagine a vote counted by the volume of Viking roars rather than slips of paper or electronic beeps, democracy with a Viking twist. It's almost as if you're witnessing an ancient, bearded rock concert, with boisterous approval or dismay rolling through the crowd like waves. The things also served a social and economic function, acting as a precursor to modern fairs, where people exchanged news, goods, and even prospective spouses. It was an event eagerly anticipated, a break from everyday toils, with its own share of drama and diplomatic dance-offs. And no Viking gathering would be complete without the potential for mischief. Stories suggest that some feuds could escalate to the point where settling disagreements with less than diplomatic combat wasn't off the table. Complicating affairs further, not all things are created equal. You might encounter a local thing, like the one you're in, or stumble upon the extraordinary Althing, a grander affair held in Iceland, which historians argue was the closest thing to a national parliament among these fierce northerners. Held at Ingvellir, it was the meeting of all meetings, where representatives from across the island gathered under the watchful eye of nature's splendor. Your historical journey through the thing is infused with the raw aroma of sea air mixed with the earthy scent of pine. You swear you can hear the background of water crashing in the fjords, rhythmic and timeless, much like the discussions happening around you. The thing reminds you that Viking society was far from lawless. It's an eye-opener to realize that even in ancient societies, organized governance and community engagement were crucial, long before national anthems and formal attire. Who knew that beneath the external image of seafaring marauders lay the heart of debaters and cunning negotiators? As the day's assembly winds down, you can almost feel the camaraderie amongst the Vikings, an understanding born from shared experiences and even shared disagreements. It's a coming together that, in its simplicity and complexity, has shaped the way societies form consensus across centuries. You start to wonder, despite all the technological advances and political sophistication, if some rich, loud debates might still have their place. Maybe not in the form of an outdoor assembly, but perhaps as spirited, open discussions around a coffee table or late-night campfire. And as the thing adjourns, you contemplate the knowledge and customs passed down through these gatherings, just like the tales recited around those Norse evening fires. It's a tapestry woven from collaboration, debate, and an undeniably human desire to govern. As you drift into the next part of your Viking day, you hang on to that thought, perhaps with a Viking horn in hand, if you're lucky. Now, let's see what the evening sagas have to offer, where stories of heroic myths and legendary feats might just let a distant past come alive. As you stand amidst the rugged Scandinavian vastness, wrapped in your many layers of furs, a necessity, not a fashion statement here, you realize you're tracing a path trodden by countless generations before you. This palpable connection to the past is a quintessential part of Viking life, where the cycle from cradle to grave is steeped in ritual, survival instinct, and an enviable knack for storytelling. The soft echoes of children's laughter and old folks' whispers blend seamlessly, hinting at the timelessness of human experience in this harsh yet profoundly beautiful land. In Viking Scandinavia, life is a shared experience, with generations coexisting closely, ensuring that wisdom is passed down as smoothly as the mead at breakfast. It's not uncommon to witness children learning the ropes of raiding, trading, or maybe just how not to accidentally set their longhouses on fire, valuable lessons imparted by the ever-watchful elders. Ah, yes, the wisdom of age in Viking society is less about sage advice over herbal teas and more about survival hacks for those pesky daily Viking challenges. The Viking societal foundation relies extensively on oral tradition. Aloof modern sensibilities might scoff at memorizing lineage back to Odin's era, but when a story is all that stands between you and oblivion on a long sea voyage, you'd better hope Uncle Harold's epic poetry sticks. Historians still argue whether these sagas were exaggerated bedtime tales or true historical accounts abridged for entertainment value. Imagine the Vikings of old, reclining after a long day of pillaging, earnestly reciting their past triumphs, not unlike today's enthusiastic retelling of Uncle Bob's epic fishing story at family gatherings. From a scholarly perspective, one mainstream piece of historical fabric that weaves through Viking life is the tradition of the Althing, where laws were recited from memory, a narrative passed down through the eons, the elders' words echoing louder than the Norse winds. This judiciary assembly was a cornerstone of governance for these seafaring storytellers. And at the heart of the Althing, those who could recite the law were far more revered than their lack of fashion sense might suggest. Yet, life in Viking society isn't all grand tales and poetic recitals. The cradle-to-grave arc is underwritten by the stark realities of living in a world where winter's chill is a mere heartbeat away, and not everyone gets to grow gray-bearded and wise. Between survival and myth, Viking funerals were both reverent and practical spectacles. The grander funerals, that sometimes even involved ships, are legendary, yet, archaeological digs occasionally unearth other unexpected burial practices, grave goods sometimes as mundane as a favorite tool or as peculiar as a board game piece, proving once and for all that even in death, Viking priorities could include work and play. While mainstream historical accounts often focus on battle-hardened warriors and seafaring conquests, the quieter, more personal moments reveal a nuanced understanding of life and death. Quirks abound. Did you know that some believed facial hair, specifically lack thereof, affected one's passage in the afterlife? Cue the modern beard enthusiasts and their historical footnotes. Let's not forget the role of Viking women, the true keystones in this arc. These women wielded significant influence over household affairs and were the de facto custodians of memory, ensuring that tales of ancestors endured, carving both stone and story with nimble resolve. Women in Viking society were far from the backdrop. Instead, they were the threads binding the tapestry of daily existence. As you stand amid these Viking tales, contemplating the men and women who deftly navigated life's frothy waves, it's clear their example offers much to ponder. Surely, our modern penchant for preserving every digital memory on the cloud pales in contrast to their impressive oral legacies. Historians often find themselves mused by unanswered questions, particularly whether Vikings regarded these daily stories as mundane details or as immortalized sagas for the ages. So, as you imagine yourself part of a tradition far older than any day planner or electronic organizer, you start to appreciate the full breadth of Viking life, from exuberant beginnings to solemn endings. It's a gentle reminder that history is far from a dusty tome, rather, it's vibrant, whispered across centuries, one shared story at a time. As the cold Nordic dawn gives way to stories spun back and forth over the crackling hearth, you embrace this moment, a fleeting participant in the eternal story of life played out on nature's grand stage. As the leaves morph into a sea of amber and the frost begins to nip more persistently at your nose, the Viking village hums with a mix of urgency and quiet resolve. You find yourself amidst this medieval hustle and bustle, trying to ignore the fact that you've worn socks with your sandals, a fashion faux pas regardless of the century. The chill in the air is akin to an unwanted guest that overstays its welcome, reminding the villagers that winter's grip is imminent. You stroll through the settlement, where every hand is occupied in the meticulous task of packing away the summer's excess. The sights and sounds are a strange blend, half prepper convention, half a Jane Austen gardening scene where everyone uses axes instead of trowels. This buzz of activity is centered on a singular mission: surviving through the Scandinavian winter, a season that doesn't take kindly to the ill-prepared. Feel the earthy aroma of root vegetables clinging to the breeze as villagers bury them in cool, dark pits, a natural refrigerator long before the wonders of Freon. These medieval stockpiles include onions, carrots, and turnips, providing much-needed sustenance during the barren months. Historians still argue whether the Vikings originally came up with the concept of farm-to-table dining, although granted, their table was more of a communal trough, and the farm mostly consisted of whatever they could wrestle from the grip of the unforgiving land. Nearby, you can observe a group of women, sleeves rolled high, turning the rich, fatty cuts of boar and venison into smoked delicacies. They laugh together, popping the occasional berry, like a communal tribe episode of Influence. Underneath this jovial camaraderie, there's a steely determination, for spoiling food could spell disaster. Smoke dances up into the sky like some primordial incense offering to Thor, the god of thunder, perhaps a small plea for a less tumultuous season of storms. A few paces away, a young lad drags bundles of firewood, his face pink with exertion. You might think you'd easily keep pace until he effortlessly hauls another load twice your imagined capacity. Firewood is being stacked meticulously. Any gap in the pile is a potential chill seeping into the longhouse, an unwelcome guest even more so than your sandals and socks. The importance of this readily available fuel source is hard to overstate in these colder climes. Without it, the longhouse turns from warm hearth to frosty prison. As the kaleidoscope of chores unfolds before you, one artifact captures your attention: an antlered cap. The juxtaposition of this peculiar headgear amidst all the winter preparations piques your curiosity. Now, remember this: Vikings did not have horns on their helmets, a misnomer perpetuated by 19th century romantics. But they did have mischievous moments, and this antlered creation may well be one, a whimsical artifact historians still debate, perhaps a ceremonial cap or a jest to amuse children during the dark, relentless nights. The days grow shorter, and you can sense a palpable shift in the village rhythm. Heads nod in acknowledgement, as families check off various tasks on personal mental lists, some of which might carry legends like Fix Bjorn's leaky roof, a task that, amusingly, has reportedly been on the communal agenda since the summer rains. This slight collective anxiety underscores that the true Vikings did not have the luxury of procrastination when it came to nature's calendar. In one corner of this bustling preparation lies a creative endeavor, the crafting of woolen goods by the fire's glow. Women's skilled hands dance through the loops and weaves with practiced ease, producing coverings heavy enough to double as weighted blankets, the kind you see influencers touting for their anxiety-reducing properties. But here, they're not just a cozy Netflix accessory, they're an essential barrier against the biting cold. An aged storyteller takes a break to light a pipe, because what's a vanilla smoke-scented campfire without a wizened figure sharing tales? He regales a gaggle of listeners with accounts of fierce battles and daring voyages. These stories, staples of Viking culture, carry warnings wrapped in entertainment, cautionary tales woven into the societal fiber, reminding everyone of past triumphs and warnings against future folly. As your senses sway and your eyes strain in the fading light, you consider the age-old practice of storytelling, a potent tool for passing time and knowledge, with each tale reinforcing moral standards and societal norms. Historians still argue whether these stories, rich with embellishment, skewed more towards entertainment or education. The sun dips toward the horizon, casting elongated shadows that frolic over the now complete preparations. Fields lay barren yet secure, and the village's outward calm reflects an inward readiness to withstand whatever winter may bring. The culmination of the enduring efforts is almost a relief, prompting communal songs, a little off-key harmonizing as if you stumbled into an Iron Age version of a folksy karaoke night. You might ponder, in this moment, if even among all this strife and struggle, you could eventually adapt to such a life. After all, nothing prompts a fascinating introspection quite like looking back on a day that demanded everything and more from those who lived it. Perhaps you've discovered a newfound respect for the Vikings' tenacity, admiring their relentless spirit to emerge victorious in the face of nature's indifference. Yet, as you take your leave, perhaps still contemplating that anachronistic footwear choice, you nod once more to the village. Each element, each tradition and task, is like another stitch in a heavy woolen tunic, interwoven with purpose and perseverance, a vivid tapestry of survival beyond the realm of comfort and ease. And as modern conveniences draw you back to the present, the allure of a softer, safer season becomes almost irresistible, like the call of a soft pillow and a warm blanket. As the day wanes and the cool twilight envelopes the village, you find yourself gathered around the warm, inviting glow of crackling torches. Shadows dance across the rugged features of the Viking faces surrounding you, each marked by a life of resilience. The human stories shared amid the softly undulating column of smoke create a tapestry as complex and colorful as the northern lights themselves. With each flicker of light, the sagas begin. These aren't your average bedtime stories, they're epics brimming with gods, giants, and heroes wielding swords that might be more suited for a warrior's wall than your typical Sunday brunch conversation. You find yourself entranced by tales of Odin's wisdom, Thor's might, and Loki's mischievous antics. Historians are still at odds over whether Loki was a family black sheep or a misunderstood anti-hero deserving his own spin-off series. The air is thick with the scent of pinewood burning and the low hum of nearby streams. The stories continue with the occasional dramatic pause, intended either to build suspense or to make you realize how lucky you are to live in a world with central heating and streaming services. A particularly daring story unfolds about the crafting of Bjorn's legendary sword, which, if the boasting is to be believed, was forged from the very essence of a fallen star. Did meteors actually land in the Viking era, or is this just an ancient example of creative writing? We'll leave that to the archaeologists. The firelight casts a soft glow on the eager faces of those around you. Women and men alike listen intently, yet it's the children whose eyes gleam brightest with wonder and beliefs untainted by adult cynicism. Every gasp of surprise and laughter resonates through the crisp evening air. It seems the oral traditions held here are not just entertainment but are valuable lessons on life, bravery, and an ever-present hint of divine intervention. There's an underlying rhythm to the night, a gentle reminder of life's constants, the cycle of day and night, the changing of seasons, and the stories changing slightly with each telling. You find yourself cozy beneath layers of furs, pondering life without Wi-Fi while listening to the rhythmic clash of history and myth. It strikes you that, in a way, these storytellers are the ancient world's cable subscribers, with each sage having exclusive rights to a particular saga or myth. It's an art form passed down generations, with each storyteller adding a personal flair to the legends. Was Ragnar truly as tall as the stories? Or was that just the Viking equivalent of a commercial break gimmick? Your mind wanders back to the villagers you met this morning, remembering their friendly nods of welcome and the hamlet's generous hospitality. You wonder if any of the warriors who trained in the courtyard earlier are now among this crowd with you, raising a generous mug of mead and sharing their own adventures seasoned with only the faintest hint of exaggeration. As the evening deepens, your eyes are drawn upward to the starlit sky, unfathomably vast and beautiful. The Milky Way stretches its bright arm across the heavens, a celestial river as unchanging yet ever-flowing as the time-worn tales being recited. Historians still argue whether Vikings properly navigated using seafaring charts or merely used the stars, much like you are trying to navigate between dream and reality as sleepiness lulls you into its familiar embrace. Ancient traditions and modern comforts mingle in your mind, evoking a sense of respect for those who lived and thrived in such austere conditions. You become acutely aware of the contrasts at play, the freezing chill of the night offset by the warmth of the fire, the harshness of the Viking lifestyle juxtaposed with the coziness it fosters here and now. Will you last a day in their shoes, with challenges and unknowns at every turn? Or do you find yourself longing for the simpler trials of Googling how to survive without a smartphone for a weekend? But the night is not about lingering questions as much as it's about slipping into sweet slumber beside a fading flame. The torch's light softens, joined by the nighttime hum of the earth settling, punctuated by contented sighs and the occasional chorus of snores from slumbering villagers. The stories are quieting now, just like the whispers of the universe winding down, their legacy carefully deposited into the minds of children who will one day tell them anew. The evening draws to a close, urging your mind to ease and abandon both modern concerns and ancient battles in favor of serene dreams. And so, curl up and let the colorful threads of sagas fade into the warm darkness beyond the firelight. Let your thoughts be gently lulled by the rhythmic dance of stars that have shone on countless Viking nights before. Breathe deeply, relax, and surrender to the calm that gradually folds around you, like the comforting embrace of well-worn furs, as the tales of old send you off to sleep with the soft reassurance that you're safely cradled between their echoes and the dawn of your own modern life.